F1 is going over its biggest rule change in over a decade, and in this video I've decided I'm going to try and predict what should be unpredictable. I'll be going through my 26 pre-season predictions, starting off with 6 broad predictions, then some championship ones, then changes for drivers and calendar, and then 8 random events, before trying to guess the drivers and constructor standings for 2026. This is going to go well. So starting off, I reckon there are going to be at least 6 different winners, including in sprints. I think my first one last year was that 2 different teams would have both drivers win races, and we know how that went. I think at least 7 teams will get podiums. I also think at least 4 teams will get pole positions. I am going to bring back that prediction from last year, though. I think 2 different teams will see both of their drivers get wins. I think at least 3 drivers will not get points. Last year, I thought it might be 3. It ended up being 2. Now, granted, Colapinto and Doohan were at Alpine. Neither of them did the full season. But, yeah. I also reckon, to round out that set of predictions, there'll be at least 1 new race winner. As for championship predictions, I reckon the Red Bull powertrains will have the highest average points per driver. What I mean by that is if you divide the combined drivers for the 2 teams in the season by the points they scored, you will end up with the highest average. I reckon Ferrari will have the lowest. That is just because of the sheer number of teams that they have, and also the fact that you have the smallest budget team in Haas and the newest outright team in Cadillac. I reckon that across driver, team and power unit there'll be 1 new champion. So it could be Red Bull Powertrains, it could be George Russell, it could be Haas. I reckon at least 1 driver will score more than 3 times what their teammate does. So it could be infinitely more, like Pierre Gasly last season. Or it could be, I don't know, what was Alonso to Stroll? I think that was something like triple the points at the end of last season. Likewise, I think at least 1 driver will beat their teammate more than 20-4 over the Grand Prix. And to wrap out my championship predictions, I think at least 2 of last year's top 4 teams will drop at least 1 spot in the 2026 standings. Now 4 changes, and for number 13 I reckon at least 1 world champion will retire. It could be the world champion this season ends up being a Nico Rosberg and just retires. It could be either of the 2 that people think it might be, it's Lewis Hamilton or Fernando Alonso, or it could be that Verstappen decides that he just wants to go off and do GT World Challenge. There are all kinds of different scenarios here. I think at least 4 drivers will change teams. I also think at least 1 driver will be dropped by their team. And that's going to be ideally for the kind of end of the season. I think I technically got it with Doohan, because Doohan left Alpine after getting dropped mid-season. And yeah, I think that as for the calendar, the 2027 calendar will have 25 or more races. Any new races will not be on a brand new track, so no Qadiyah. And I think at least 1 classic track will be dropped. That could be, unfortunately, Barcelona. Now, as for my wildcards, I think there'll be at least 2 occasions where teammates crash into each other over the course of the season. I think 1 team will have a double DSQ. I think 1 driver will get dropped mid-season, whether or not that means they stay in the organisation or whether they just get booted entirely. Those are 2 different things. I think 1 driver will get a race ban. I think 2 drivers will have DNSs, including in sprints. I think 2 drivers will also finish every race. I reckon that 1 driver will crash in the pit lane during a Grand Prix. And here's going to be an interesting one. I reckon the fastest pit stop will be 1.8 seconds. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to predict the drivers and Constructors' Championships, starting off with the teams. I'm going to put Cadillac at the bottom. It's nothing against Cadillac, they're a brand new team. It could be that they do what Alpine did and end up with dozens of points, but last in the standings. Likewise, for Audi as a new power unit, I reckon they're going to be in 10th. Alpine may climb up a bit, but I don't think they're going to be any higher than 9th. And Haas, well, they may stay put a little bit, 8th. Same for the next two, Aston Martin for 7th, Racing Bulls in 6th. Then I'm going to put Ferrari in 5th. I'm going to put Williams in 4th. I'm going to put Mercedes in 3rd. Red Bull, they're going to move up one. They'll be in 2nd. I think McLaren will still be Constructors' Champions. My reasoning for this, I think McLaren have got the strongest out-and-out driver lineup. If they can put together a good car like they have the past few seasons, if they can hit the ground running like they tend to do in a season, they can build up momentum so that when their rivals catch up, they've got an unassailable advantage. I also think that for the other teams, there is going to be a reason why they drop further down. So it might be that one of their drivers struggles a little bit more. It might be more peaks and troughs. It might be that we end up with a really competitive 5 through 12 of drivers, and then you have a top 4 that stand head and shoulders above the rest. Though I reckon it'll be a top 5, so let's get into the drivers. Somebody has to be last, and unfortunately I'm going to pick Franco Colapinto. It's nothing against Franco himself. I think Alpine are still going to struggle. I think that Gasly will do quite well. And also, compared to the other people who are down at the tail end, I think that he's got the lowest potential this season out of the 3 of them, considering that if we don't have anybody dropped or banned, I have to say that 22 drivers are going to be there and 3 of them won't get points. Which unfortunately means that my next 2, P21 Sergio Perez, just again, new team, and although they have a lot of fantastic people working for them at Cadillac, for a lot of them they'll be working together for the first time. And then for P20, I'm going with Audi, going with Gabriel Bortoleto. For P19, again, keeping with this theme, Valtteri Bottas. Again, nothing against Bottas, nothing against Cadillac. It's just going to be a really competitive field this season, I reckon. Lance Stroll, who I just realised on my list I've accidentally called Lanco Stroll. He's going to be P18, I think P18 for car 18. That makes a lot of sense. And for P17, I reckon Nico Hülkenberg, which is the Audi in 10th element of it. P16, I'm going with Esteban Ocon, because P15, I'm going to go with Pierre Gasly. I reckon the Gasly will get one up on his old teammate. I reckon the Gasly will be doing the lion's share of Alpine's points again, if not all of them. And so I reckon he will be outperforming a lot of drivers, including some teams outright. P14, I'm going with Liam Lawson. P13, Oliver Behrman, so I reckon he'll beat Ocon in the head-to-head again this year. And P12, Arvid Lindblad. Red Bull rate him really highly, and higher than they rated the likes of Isaac Hadjar. So the fact that they rate Lindblad in some ways, or at least it was Marco, was rating him higher than Hadjar. I have a feeling that that means that Lawson's going to be bested by a rookie teammate for the 2nd year in a row. P11, I'm going to go with Alex Albon. And that's because of just how competitive all of these upper teams are going to be. P10, I'm going with Sir Lewis Hamilton. I'm a massive Hamilton fan, but at the same time, I think there's going to be a competitive front of the field. He really struggled last year. That was his worst year on record. P10 would make this his worst year on record. I think that there's a lot of competitive people who are climbing up the order who are going to potentially get one up on him this year. Unfortunately, I think Isaac Hadjar will be P9. I don't know if Red Bull will get out of that second driver curse, but I have a feeling that Verstappen will just be able to work better in a team that has been built around him now for the best part of a decade. Andrea Kimi Antonelli, I'm going to put P8. If I'm honest, for a new race winner, I think he's the most likely one. But whilst I think that Hadjar has got the ability to outperform Antonelli relative to their potential in the machinery, I also reckon that Antonelli has the higher peaks right now. P7, I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso. I think this is going to be an absolute wildcard one, but remember when he first came across to Aston Martin for 2023? Remember how he got all those podiums? I have a feeling that Aston Martin Honda could be quite peaky and trothy, and I have a feeling that Alonso will make the most of those peaks. But P6, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. And it's just because he's having such rotten luck with Ferrari these past couple of seasons. So, I don't know. I have a feeling that he will get bested by a former teammate, who I'm going to put P5, because that will be why Williams is going to be ahead of Ferrari, thanks to Mercedes power units. I'm buying into this. I know it's press uproar for Ferrari, and I know I've just seen the news that Williams is going to be missing the Barcelona test entirely, but I reckon Carlos Sainz will end up P5. P5 for the smooth operator, number 55. Yeah. I need some proper wildcard predictions in here, and I think that's one of the more wildcardy ones I have. As I do with the fact that I'm putting the reigning world champion Lando Norris P4. Norris is relentlessly consistent, but in a season where I reckon there are going to be a lot of different race winners, you need to be a bit more peaky. Which is why I'm putting his teammate in third, Oscar Piastri. I do believe the McLaren have the strongest lineup. They may end up being the closest matched pair. But I reckon that Piastri's peaky trophiness will be cancelled out by Lando's consistency. It'll get them to the Drivers' Championship? No. It'll get them to the Team's Championship? Yeah. P2, I'm going to go for number 3. Max Verstappen. I do buy into the thing that he is the best driver in F1 right now. I think that he can make the most of any situation. He can have the red mist descend, but if he's on the back foot and he thinks that the championship's out of his hands, he can be by far the best driver and just absolutely dominate. But I don't think he'll be world champion. I think the world champion will be somebody who is relentlessly consistent, who gets memed on for doing nothing and getting a great result. That's right. I think George Russell is going to be world champion. I'm going to buy into this. I've seen lots of people saying this and speculating this. Mercedes get rules changes generally right. They tend to have the meta when it comes to the power unit. And if the rumours about the engines have been believed, this could bear well for George Russell. I have a feeling that Mercedes are cautiously optimistic. I don't think that there will be a particularly dominant car or team or driver in 2026. Which is why that's a perfect opportunity for someone like George Russell to become world champion. But what do you reckon, folks? Do you reckon that I'm talking out of a proverbial in this case, or do you reckon there's an element of truth in what I'm saying? Just let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, thank you for watching, thank you for joining, thank you for your continued support. Till next time, it's bye for now.